Recording in process. Okay, here we go. Thanks everyone for coming. This program is brought to you by the letter M for Microcomputer Applications, Garfield High School, where they made me spend 6 months working on Excel. It's been the most useful thing I ever did, even though I hated it at the time. Also, special thanks to what we've been calling ourselves the SPS data nerds, about 10 to 20 people who just like to work for data, and they're very thorough. Also, especially to former director Vivian Song, who actually explained the basics of this, that maybe they'll start even decoded of this, and then at the end went through analyses really carefully with me to make sure we got it right. And clearly Christy for making the Zooms possible, and Kat K for monitoring chat. For this talk, if you want to unmute and just ask questions, you're welcome to. You can type it in chat and interrupt me. I'm good at interruptions, so please just do that. And if I talk too fast or unclearly, please stop me. I can't see chat though, so if you type a message to me, make sure Kat waves at me or something. Cool. All right, so the talk. Analyzing SPS expenditures using Google Sheets and a lot of clicking. So this is going to be the basic overview, just who I am, what the goal is. Then there's going to be a sort of just a didactic explanation of some concepts, which will probably go a little too fast. And then I think they'll consolidate when we actually try the last part where we walk through and look at some items in the spreadsheet. Okay. Cool. So who am I? Albert Wong, SPS graduate, random bio stuff, probably not super interesting. I'm a former software engineer, so forth. But just so you have some context for me. Why should you trust me? Don't. My first rule on SPS, don't trust anything right now. As far as I can tell, all the data is kind of hard to understand and no one gets it. Instead, try to understand where it comes from and rebuild the information. So on this talk, I am probably 80 to 90% confident that I have gotten all the understanding of the expenditures correctly, and about 60 to 70% confident about my understanding of the personnel file. That's what I'm going to pass out as much as I can to you guys and do your own research afterwards. Okay. So the goal of this talk is basically what I would love is at the end of this, in the next few months, if people start saying like, let's go and remove all the administrators from FUBAR program and get really rabid about it, someone can go sit there and go, well, can we guess, is this a $1 million savings, a $500 savings, or a $10 million savings? And then either stop that discussion or pursue it hard. I think a lot of our energy is misspent currently because people actually basically chase the wrong problem, which is actually what I just said here. But yeah, okay. So yeah, I do think that is pretty important here in the coming months, is that we have to sort of somehow as a group stay focused, even though there's no real group of us. Okay. Things this will not give you is invoices. This is really frustrating. So what we have here is state level data that at a category level, but we don't actually have things like.
Can you make sure this isn't damaged?
Huh? Damaged?
I think someone is unmuted.
Oh. Okay.
Sorry, that's me. I'll mute.
Okay. Yes. Hans? Yeah, no. No. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yes. So we don't have invoices. We don't, and maybe someone should PRR all the invoices or the entire general ledger. But we don't get that less. We can't answer questions like how much money we spent on contracts and consultants. People always ask us, we don't have it. We can bound it to some degree though. That's actually really powerful. And that's what the rest of this talk will kind of get into, is how much we can bound things by. So there's basically 3 questions you can ask with it is, can I prove or disprove this amount of money exists? Can I get details about it? Is it going to be really exactly 275K per principal or something? And if not, can I get some sort of range? That last one's actually very powerful. If I can't figure it out, you can probably decide that it's within $1 million or $2 million or something like that, right? Okay. Next is some caveats. Do not jump to conclusions of this. This happened to me a lot of times looking at this. If something looks really weird, it's probably a mistake in our understanding first. And then it could possibly be a mistake in their bookkeeping. And then it might actually be a real problem. Make sure to be careful about that. Also remember that we're dealing with really large numbers. If you're not used to this, my rule of thumb right now is if you think about a pie and it's filled with pumpkin pie, one thimbleful of that pie is the same amount as about $4 million in the budget. That's actually the actual fractional math. A pie is about 1 liter. A thimble is about 4 milliliters. There you have. So if someone gets really mad about $4 million to spend, that's how much we're talking about. Okay.
Albert, there's a question in the chat.
Yes.
Can we assume that if we don't have the full ledger, the school board doesn't have it either?
I will assume that they do not, and I will also assume, I do not know if that's true, actually, but I will assume that even if they did, they probably didn't know how to look at it.
Awesome. Second question in the chat. Says there are 3 general questions you may or may not plan to answer. Do you think the data from SPS is intentionally nebulous? Are there requirements about what level of data they're required to publish and release? And 3, can we ask them for more detail, or is that needed?
I'll go backwards here on those. I think you can PRR the entire general ledger. I've never tried it. The problem is the PR process is often months. But I think that's actually possible. I don't invoices. It's public data. It's ours, literally ours, not theirs. Are there requirements about it? Yes, we are actually using the state data, which is the required process by which the district has to report the accounting to the state every year. That's why this data here I know is accurate. And then are they being intentionally nebulous? That's a hard question. I think there's a lot of back of the envelope math that doesn't look too wrong on the surface, but I think they're not spending enough time looking deeper. I don't want to attribute people attempting to mislead. I actually don't believe people try to do that in public service, personally. That's a bias. So I would just say it's difficult, probably. And there's also probably scared of being yelled at because, frankly, everyone yells at each other in SPS, including us. So we've sort of made that problem ourselves. More questions?
Not yet.
Okay. Other one warning, reducing expenses does not always lower the deficit. This is, you have to know what the expense is coming from and whether it's self-funding, for instance. Very, very specific examples. If you reduce the amount of busing by removing the number of sites, we actually reduce the amount of money that comes in from the state. I don't know if that balances, right? Special education has a very large amount of expenditures, but that has a different fund. If you don't know, you can't even move the money necessarily. It's hard to know. So don't somehow think these are stealing money from each other. It's not happening. Other weird things like legal settlements, as we've seen in the news, those are partially reimbursed by the state. Our expenditures will go up, but our revenue will go up. So if you're going to talk about deficit reduction, you need to know the revenue side, and we haven't looked at that enough. But we can actually target what to examine. That's what we can do here. Okay. Lastly, this is a personal request to be mindful. Every single thing we talk about here on reductions really probably means firing someone. This is the one thing I think Will Research School did that was slightly dishonest. They said, if we close schools, we would save XYZ positions. But if you actually looked at what they removed, it was exactly those positions. 70% of the savings they were trying to go for came from removing staff. We are talking about removing people's jobs. And then as we look at this data, we are looking at their personal financial data. So please be mindful. There's a difference between the data being public, making it easy to search, publishing it somewhere, and then talking about it as a group on a video. So in this talk, I intentionally destroyed all the names in the S275. You can find it yourself. Okay. All right.
Albert,
yeah.
There was a quick question. What does S275 mean?
Good question. Next slide. Overview of data sources. Budget book, F-196, P-2223, S-225, blah, 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 blah. Oh my God, help. All right. So so here's the basic process that I understand of the things. In the spring, the district produces something called a budget book. That budget book is signed, and then it is condensed into a form called F-195 and sent to the state. Every month, this district creates an enrollment report called the P-223, which has how many students are there, and the state looks at it, and then based on the budget and so forth, gives some money back called an apportionment. That's the money that comes back. Then on October 1st, the primary headcount as well as the staffing inventory is taken for who's around, and that is used to make the next budget book. Then at the very end of the year, they create two things: a summary of the general ledger called the F-196, which has, like I said, the invoices and too much detail taken out, but lower detail taken out, but it has a lot. And then lastly, the question you asked, you have the personnel file, which is the S-275, which lists sort of everyone that worked for a district for the year. And that's going to be, and it used to apparently have a lot of demographic information even down to SSN. It's kind of like creepy. So, but it's there, and it's public data, and it's a Microsoft Access for some god awful reason. So, make sense? Okay. Where is this data? It's in all these places. I'm not going to go through all the links too much here, except I'll show one later, just so you know where to find exact raw data files. I will note one thing is most of these are the raw information, except for the last one, which is the OSPI report card. I need to keep calling this out. The OSPI report card is a little bit misleading for SPS because a third of the budget is allocated to the central office and rather than each school, and the report card sort of just smears that across every student nonsensically. So you know your entire high school class, every single student is being assigned some portion of some preschool teacher. Why? So careful when reading that one.
Okay, 2 more questions.
Yes.
Is it correct that today we'll focus on expenditures? Can we request another webinar on revenue as well? Any chance that the data nerds could make a dynamic tool where expenditures are tied to revenues? Like special ed expenditures tied to directed special ed funding?
It is going to be on expenditures. No one knows how revenues work that I know of yet. I haven't looked at them. I don't think I have the energy. If someone does actually figure that out, I will happily put together a tool. Your tool may end up just being Excel, by the way. I was going to make one initially, and I just found this better on Excel and Google Sheets. So,
awesome. Next question was a clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Which specific file shows what SPS actually spent?
This one. What do I care about? The Chlid General Fund Expenditures. That is the name from the F-196. Maybe I'll just go to the website real fast once here, just because we're here. So this is the raw data files. No, that's the report. Did I link it wrong? I linked it wrong. No. SAFS data files. The wonderful thing about these terrible acronyms is they're very unique in the world. SAFS data files. I'll fix that in the slides in a second. You can see here, F-196, end of year financial data. Ignored access databases on this. This one has the CSV files here. And oh, look, because they hate me, they just gave me updated data last night that I haven't included in this talk. But now we can find out this here. That will be fast. You guys can do this yourself. This is the one you need here. Actual Chlid General Fund Expenditures. Okay. The other one you will need is this thing because that's, well, I'll have a better version of that for you, but this is actually all the decoding the numbers into what they are. Like, what does an object code 5 mean? Oh, it means salary. That's what this has listed. Okay. But this is what you're looking for. Cool.
And one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Since you mentioned Microsoft Access, do we know what SPS uses for their data analysis? If
No idea.
Suite, does it include Power App Suite?
No idea. I know nothing about SPS. Sorry. I assume they have a real accounting system, and I assume that they can actually run these reports if you knew what to ask, what words to use to ask them. I doubt the board has no level of specificity to ask these questions. Okay. Okay, back to this. Cool. Okay, so yeah, so mostly that fun, and then the S275 is also on that same page at the very bottom. Okay. There is one thing that I do think that we should look at that I haven't, which is actually, because I said like most of this stuff is actually you don't need to care about, except for this one. I actually think there's something interesting in the monthly OSPI apportionment file, which is actually on this reports page. Let's go there and take a look real fast here. Apportionment. District. Hey. Seattle School District, Seattle Public Schools, 17001. It's like one off from the enterprise whole number. This file, which this is produced monthly. This is when I said that you send the district sent the P223 and they send money back. This is the how they send money back file. It's very large, like very large. So I'm not going to go through this because I didn't have the time to really understand it, but I think what we can probably look here is see how on track we are for the budget, how much money is coming in for whatever programs, and then we can actually kind of guess whether we're going above or beyond what we expected. And that matters specifically because what I was saying earlier, this year we have a X million-dollar gap. It was like 94 million structural gap. They managed to get enough to get it down to like 60 million, they think, for some reason. So we're just whittling this number down. I bet you we actually have already saved a few $1,000,000 in revenue because we have 737 more students than expected, and we didn't get as many teachers hired as we would have liked to keep our ratios down. So it'd be nice to know how much we were there too. But someone should understand that foul, not me. Okay. More questions?
2 more notes from the chat.
Mhm.
One parent said it would be great to know what is funded variably. For instance, transportation, special ed, those kinds of things. And another comment, we've got multiple coming in. There was a note about the December 18th board meeting has approval of the enterprise resource planning contract for 12 million coming up, and they included a link. And there was a question from Hans about how often does budget versus actual get reconciled?
I do not know the answers to almost any of those. Yeah, I don't know when they're reconciled. I don't know much about the board meetings. I have only looked at the expenses so far. And then the relation between programs and so forth is pretty complicated. I know that I mean, Christy, do you know who might know anything about the special ed funding? I think that's more your wheelhouse than mine.
I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay, never mind. Sorry, put you on the spot. Someone should understand that in detail, and because it's actually probably the biggest question mark in one of the 2 biggest question marks in salary spreading. We'll see in a second. And then second one is like transportation. Mary Ellen Russell wrote down a explainer on the STARS formulas and so forth for transportation. I posted a copy of it on the SPS numbers website. You should read that as a starting point, and then we should understand the STARS formula in detail. That's a whole nother sort of equivalent level of depth of this. There's a spreadsheet that actually calculates it for you too, so you should be able to play with it and understand what that would do. Big questions like if we do opt-in busing and we fill our buses more, could that actually reduce our expenditures truly by a large amount of money and so forth? But I don't know. It's not my I think these are things that people need to look at. And this is, I guess, an interesting question is, as an entire community, how do we pick the right priorities for what to explore? Because we have enough people to do it. Just you kind of need to know where to go, right? These are great questions. Any more? Should I keep going?
No more right now.
Okay, analyzing expenditures. All right, wake up, everyone. This is the hard part. Okay, how to use the activity program object NCS to understand what in the world these line numbers mean. All right, so this Chlid General Fund Expenditures are a roll-up of the line items, and they're rolled up into these various buckets. Activity being things like teaching, the principal, which has its own activity for some reason, principal office, board of directors, and so forth. Then they have these things called programs, which are like basic education, learning assistance programs, special education, ESSAR funds, things COVID stuff. Program in my head often means more fun, sort of quasi-related funding source, but I'm not quite sure that's true. That's what it reads like to me. Object is only about 11 codes, and there are things like salary, purchase services, capital outlay, debt transfer, so forth. It basically says, is this a monetary transfer? Is it a capital expense? Are you paying a human, or is it something else, effectively? Okay. NCES code, that's actually a national standard. These numbers are, in fact, are national across the, that's why it ends national, across the country. And they are what I think of as sort of the equivalent of your Quicken expense classification. Like, is it a health benefit, regular employee? Is it natural gas spending, or so forth? There's a long list of codes. Okay. Then you have school code, clearly which schools are going to, all the regular schools that I put the FAB for here, as well as quote unquote district office, the central office, which is doesn't mean it goes to J2E, the John Stanford Center. It just means that they didn't split the accounting to different schools. And then lastly, subfund, which says whether the funds come from state funds or local funds. That one I've never figured out how to do anything useful with that last one, but it's there. Okay. Activity, program, and object are all defined by OSPI, by the state. There's no control from the district over this. That's just what they have to do for reporting. NCS is a national standard. So, okay. Cool. Problems of the code. They are too granular and too general. Program, for instance, has 4 different types of quote, quote, basic education on 7 different kinds of special education. And for most of us, in most of the analysis, you probably don't need to split them apart that much. Right? Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. But most of the time, at your first cut, you don't want that much. Activity is too general. There are 9 things that mean central administration. I mean, you know, an object, again, is not useful enough. If you hear people complain about purchase services, because purchase services by itself is a huge bucket, it's not readable. NCSS is now too granular and too general. It has almost all information, but it doesn't actually break apart your employees enough for you to correlate with the personnel file. This is annoying. So the only way to use them is actually use them all together at once. And this is where the budget book, I think, makes a big mistake. The budget book tends to be like, here's the graph by object code, here's the graph by activity, and so forth. And by themselves, this is sort of useful to understand at a top level, but not at all useful enough to understand what's happening. So to use it, what I did here is I simplified all the codes so that, there's only one word for basic ed. And, the data nerds helped me. We went through like 100 of these and just kind of combined them down. Then we added another grouping, which is for activities, because activities are correct granularity, but every now and then you want to see a block of them. And we followed the budget book sort of classification of central admin, teaching support, and principal office. So we have sort of a hierarchy here. And then afterwards, we basically summed up the line items and let you break it down based on how much granularity by school or whatnot and so forth. With this, you can kind of see what's going on. Okay. Great, huh? Well done? No. I'm pretty sure that made no sense to anyone. Let's do a walkthrough. It's going to be a lot better of a walkthrough. Okay. So what we're going to do in the first exercise is try to reproduce the budget book categories. Okay. And then we're verified against the actual budget book. So I'm going to come out of here. If you want to follow along, the links above have, I think it's the first one. It says like Chlid General Fund CGFE1. Open it up, clone the spreadsheet, make a copy for yourself, and then you can just edit it. If you want to do pivot tables, you have to do it that way. So make copies of these things, or just watch me, your choice. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually try to get to this point here. So this is the budget book, and we want to get to page 36, which of course is page 40 something here. Okay, so here you can see in the budget book, and they do this every year, they say the activity codes are too granular. So we create teaching and teaching support and principal office and other administration and so forth. And in here, they actually, in the bottom here in the table, they list exactly which activity is considered teaching, which ones are considered teaching support, which ones are considered other activities and so forth. Okay. And in our code here, so this is the Chlid General Funds table. You'll see that over here in activities, this is the number, and this is the name per the Excel file in the raw data files. And what we just did is we wrote the word central administration over the side and other support activities over the side and so forth. Okay. So now we've made this mapping table. Yippee. Now here, this line items is that actual Chlid General Fund CSV from the website. Okay, if anyone's going to try to do this, try to upload that right now along the side, don't. The thing you download from the raw data file has every school in the whole district, in the whole state, it will crash Google Sheets uploading it. You need to strip it down to just the SPS first. So this is just the raw thing stripped to county district code 17001, which is the district, and so forth. And you see all these funny codes here, NCS code, object code, blah, 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 which are unreadable. And then over here, I used a VLOOKUP command to read from this table and put it in there. Okay, so now we have all, 9th grade Excel doing this. And I can do that more detail later. All right, so now we have a line item spend. This thing is spending here $327 on some learning resource for teacher support or work that's somehow related to worker compensation. I don't understand. Okay, at Adams, at State Fund. This is really hard to read. So we just start with making a pivot table. Insert pivot table. New sheet. Click this little edit button here. Why is this so hard to read? All right. So what we're going to do is pivot tables let you basically sum up the table by groupings. And so what we want to do is, let's say we want to group everything by this budget category that we put in there. Oh, look, all the budget categories showed up. How magical. But there's nothing to write here. What do we want to see by it? We want to sum up. What did I add? Oops. No, that made no sense. I want to add all the amounts. Oh, look how magical that is. Okay, so let's go back and forth here. Let's start from the bottom. First sanity check. 11242149449. That's going to hurt my head. 11242149449. We matched. I'm using the 2024 budget book because they happen to keep the actuals for 2020. They try to. They usually have 2 years of actuals. I don't know why they used the budget from last year in this one, but in any case, this is a check. If you look at the previous year budget book, this is in this column. But okay, and then we can now just go through and we can see that, like, for teaching, 641, 641, so forth, and we can kind of go down this and we'll find it's basically right minus I have some mistake in my categorization here, so there's 59K missing, and it's somewhere between, I think, the principal office and so forth. But it's effectively down to the penny on this matchup. Okay. Questions yet?
There was one question from a couple of minutes ago.
Yes.
That would the sub-fund - local funds mean that things are paid for with a local levy versus state funding?
That is correct. I just don't know how to do anything useful in analysis with that. State funding, if you look at the budget book, only covers 62% of it, right? And there's other branches here. So local probably comes from here. I didn't see federal anywhere. I don't know why. So I'm kind of confused what that sub-fund means exactly. But it definitely means what I can tell you is it means it's not from here, but I don't know what to do with that. I also don't know where grants show up in here, by the way. I was trying to figure that out. Though again, the total grants across the district is 4 million, so one thimbleful. Okay. All right, so great. Yippee. So I recreated a budget book. That's useless. I might as well read the budget book. Let's have some more fun here. All right, what do we want to find out? Let's go and see. We have the budget category. Let's look at what the actual activity description is for each one. Now I can start seeing some breakouts here. Okay. And now I can see that central administration is actually broken up by these X activities and so forth. And then this is also hard to read because they're in a funny order. So what you want to do here is change your categories to sort by the amount of money descending. Now we're getting somewhere. Now we see that we spend 645.1 million a year in teaching. And 64 million a year in transportation. And 32 million years in information systems. Well, what are we doing there, right? And you can come down here and come back to central administration. 30 million of it is in supervision and instruction. What does that mean? Okay, let's get a little further. The hierarchy should be budget category activity. If you want, you can put program in. This is sometimes a hit or miss of being useful, I found. I use simplified program, which is, like I said, the 4 basic edges are 1 basic ed and so forth. Also, I find it's best to add them in rows rather than add them in columns. So here's simplified here. And again, you need to change the sort to actually sort in descending order of some, because I don't know why people start with ascending order. It's numbers go upside down. Okay, so now you can see in teaching that 600 and something million, 345 goes to regular educational, 166 goes to special ed, 37 million goes to transitional bilingual, and so forth. Okay. If you go down to central office again, where is this? And you can actually, if this is annoying, you can actually, on a pivot table, you can actually roll up any category you don't want to see too much of, which is kind of nice. So here, supervision, 16 million in supervision of basic education. I don't know what that means either. Okay. And you can see there's like 14 million human resources. Good question what that is. Okay, let's go a little further. Let's drill down one more level here and start going into, I'm going to skip object code. Object code is too general to be useful as something to look at. It's useful as a filter. I will explain that in a second. NCS description. This is going to get too big usually at this point to understand. Oh, and then of course, again, being in my existence. Sort descending. Okay, central mission, basic education, 11 million in regular employment salary. And then some amount in retirement contributions and so forth. So this is basically, as you can see then, from here to here, actually, from here to here, 15 million of it, you can see once you highlight, you get the sum automatically on the bottom. 15 million is basically salary and benefits of some sort related to this. Okay. So yeah. And yeah, so that's how you can start looking at this. Questions? No. Okay.
Yes. Question. So this tool is using the 22-23 actual spends.
Mhm.
The budget obviously in 24-25 has changed significantly between what happened in 22-23.
Mhm.
So what we really need to analyze is what is planned to be planned expenditures in 24-25 and cause of change between that and previous year to see what's really going on in terms of differences in spend. Yeah. So does your tool do that?
It's not a tool, first off, it's just Excel or spreadsheets, but
Okay.
you can so this is 22-23, 23-24 data files got released in the last like couple days. I did just only notice them last night. So we can literally load this up and do the same analysis on that next year. And then I don't have any really happy way of comparing those two. You just line it up and stare at them. I do think that it's not necessarily a good assumption that much has changed between all these years. Because largely the expenditures are all staffing, unless we have had mass firings. It hasn't shifted that much, and that structural deficit has existed similarly for the last 3 years. So I'm not convinced that, I do think we should look at the latest data. I don't think it'll be that different.
The only reason I mention it is because if I look at the budget book and you see budget for 24-25, for example,
yeah,
we could look at central admin for 22-23, and it's about a little bit over 6% of the budget. Yeah. Over time, if you look at the budget book, then it shows central admin at 5.5%. And so obviously that's, 0.7% of the budget, share of the budget has gone down. I don't know what's in that or how much more is left. And so those changes are what's kind of vital to understand, right?
I agree. And you can do that. I have not done that, but I'm hoping someone will do that soon with this information. What you should do from there will come to that. We were going to do a second or start getting that is you should actually filter to just central administration. Actually, let's do that while we do it real time. So the other thing you should be able to do here is filters. That says remove things or add things. So I'm going to filter by, what was that under budget category? I said I called it this one. Remove everything but central administration. So now we're only at central administration. Okay. And then now let's do the other analysis I like to do is actually, this is where I use object a lot. Object description. Take everything but remove all the salaries, the two types of salaries and the payroll taxes and benefits. Now we here is central administration of non-staff spending. Right. And so if we go to the bottom roll up of this thing, wherever that is, 8 million of whatever it was is actually non-staff spending. So now you can actually sit there and kind of go and say that if there's a delta, where's the delta happening? It's probably in staffing. And then that means you should have to look in the budget, the personnel file book, the S275 to understand the delta. If on the other hand, you see that it's mostly not in the S275, or if the change is mostly on the other side, right, then you know that the change is happening in something, some sort of hard asset, not a human resource.
Yeah, but how do I see the delta in what you're showing?
You'll need to pull up, you need to recreate this whole thing for last year and then put it on the side. And then you'll have to look at that roll-up number versus the budget and make a guess at what changed, because we don't have information from what happened since the budget was published until end of next year.
I see.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So we're missing some information. And this is why I think if you PRR general ledger, this actual analysis technique would work on the general ledger directly because you have the same code numbers. Okay, so if we can just get the raw, if someone can get the raw general ledger, we would get a lot of information. Okay. Any more questions?
Yes. I'm going to see if Elizabeth wants to speak up directly. There's a conversation going on in the chat from former auditors.
Oh boy, I'm scared now. Okay.
Elizabeth, do you want to take yourself off mute?
Yeah, it's not that dire. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding. It sounds like for my question to be answered, I'd need to be able to get into some of the invoice data, and I have done some PRRs, and they were a little tough to get. So it sounds like it wouldn't necessarily be relevant to the absolutely amazing work that you've done here, Albert. Like really, this is really, really nice. So I was just asking about kind of individual invoices, you know. And I don't think we can get that info.
Unfortunately, not here. And
Yeah.
That is, yeah. I think the two things I would love to see PRR is all the invoices, and I would love to see someone just give me the raw data dump of your general ledger with just accounting codes and nothing else. Because even then, if you could get at least the number on the side at the granular level, you can make some guesses. So, you know.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, one more question or a request.
Yep.
Someone says, I don't have the ability to answer the questions on my own and clearly need to up my sheets knowledge even after this great walkthrough. Can you make a report of your analysis, even the high level you just showed us today?
The most I could do about it was what I wrote already, I think, on the Medium post. I don't know what else I can say. I think, yeah, I'll be frank and say like I'm a little bit out of steam on this, so I'm trying to teach it people so that someone else can produce more analyses than me.
Yeah. I've got a follow-up question, kind of like the same auditing question. I'm curious about the personnel reports. First, let me say thank you so much for pulling all of this together. With that personnel report, you said it does get specific to individuals, and so can one is there an easy way to find out whether specific staff members are being categorized differently from year to year? I'm looking at different ways of looking, for example, at who's counted within the superintendent's office or supervision, that sort of thing.
Yes. Okay, let me go through. Yes, I'm looking at time here. I want to go through this a bit to see if I can jump over towards that a little bit. Because I think what I found is that basically there were two analyses. There was the non-staff analysis like this. And once you got to this, you could make some reasonable guesses of things like, I'm spending 16K a year in vehicles. That's actually not that bad for the entire district, kind of thing like that. And kind of have some gut checks. But then a huge bucket was just staff spend. And you're like, what does that do? And so yeah. Wow. Okay. I think I jumped ahead a bunch on this stuff, which is fine. You guys ask good questions. The one last thing I do want to show really specifically here is, because it was so core to the last discussion, the few months, is filtering by school is really important. So I want to do this. I want to remove all these to just look at school, and then just pick Stanislaus for now, because they're one of the four that I looked at the most. And then let's remove the NCSD code. Too much descriptions there. Oh, no, that's not the wrong descriptions. Programs, too much description. Actually, just go to here. Okay. So you can see here, this is how we started producing the analysis of savings per school. What did I do wrong here? Clear everything. Okay, nothing. Stanislaus. There we go. And you can see we spend about 3.7 million at Stanislaus, which is a bit of a lie, because we spend more than that. But you can see the teaching amounts and so forth. To description budget category, I need to actually add program code. Program, what is one? Program, the double, and then descending, and then here. Okay. So now you understand that if we're going to talk about saving any money at Stanislaus, it's all about actually chopping effectively teachers, right? Now I'm going to do a different one here. So remember this number. So 3.7 million for the school. Okay, then let's look at a high school. Let's just say Ballard, the most expensive high school in the district, I think. 17 million. Okay. This is why the district office. Clear district office. 407 million. That's the problem. This is why it's hard to understand what's happening in the district. Over about a third of the budget is here. And I think this is just accounting WTF. I don't think they're like secreting away money. And you'll see like a lot of it, and they have things like transportation and information system maintenance, food, all the cafeteria food, all the custodial staff is there, all the grounds maintenance staff for the entire district is all just in one spot. Then they also have a huge amount of money for teaching, for bilingual teaching and special education teaching that they centrally manage, but we actually don't know which schools they go to. I don't think they're like being hired not doing anything. I'm certain they're doing the right thing, or at least what they're being told to do, but you can't optimize a system when you have no idea where anything is, right? So I think this is the big problem, is actually not being able to look into this. And I think to Garrett's point, that to understand any of this, including at the central administration, sort of what's happening with the various supervision and whatnot, you have to look at a personal file. Okay. So when I say, Tara J's kept the term mosh pit. So whenever I say, and I love it because that's what this really feels like. It's just a big smelly mess of people jumping around. So, all right, questions?
2 questions. Are the mosh pit expenses divided up into schools done by SPS or OSPI?
They are not divided up into schools, like period. Right? Like, it means that your supervisor goes through the central district, they pay you money from their accounting system, you're rolled up into there, and then they might say, like, your job is to spend every single one of all 40 hours of your week helping students A through C at school X. So that's, and yeah. And I bet you, and this is why it's so confusing, why sometimes people say, oh, there's only 14 million per school. Well, if you actually use the numbers I'm doing here and just sum up per school, you only get to about 14 million at school. But if you look at OSPI report card, it comes out to 28 million at school. And that actually is true too, because this is someone unmute. Oh, nope, okay.
Okay, there was a follow-up question that says, so is there no reporting done anywhere on how much a school actually costs?
Not in this public data I can find. They only started collecting per school breakdowns in F-196 and as of 2019. So that's sort of new. It might be they haven't migrated their whole accounting structure over, or personal reporting structure. I don't know. I'm not going to, I really dislike the idea that any public servant is trying to do a bad job. I'm going to assume that there's just a big mess, and that maybe they're using a mainframe system that they can't update. Who knows? They used to actually have mainframe tape reels in the district office. I remember them. So, you know.
Wait, can you just, what is this 407 million? You went pretty quick on, this is filtering what out of the total spend?
This is filtering nothing out of the total spend. I'm looking at the schools, right? So there's every single school has got one entry here, and then there's one school called district office, which is everything else.
Okay.
And this is just looking at what's assigned to that. So when you're looking at expenditures, you have to know whether if people have remembered to try to make a guess at what portion of this 400 million is given to any school. There's reasonable reasons to do it and not do it. You know, like legal settlements should be, I guess the board should be in central office. That is an overhead to every single person. That makes sense. Food is more questionable, but it also may not make sense to have a person buying, you know, like what is you going to do? Divide each piece of lettuce in half per school?
Got it.
Right.
Yeah. This is the allocation. This is the accounting allocation based upon your coding.
Exactly. Their coding, not mine, but yes.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. This was a critical point, I think. Questions? Okay.
2 more questions just came in. I'm going to stick with the budget question first. Can anyone here address what requests have been made at the SPS or state level to change the granularity of this information?
Not me. I've only looked at what's been available. I don't try to change things, people. I just talk about what exists. I'm kidding. I don't know. And then, yeah, I'm going to keep going because we're running out of time here, and the next portion is still not simple. Okay. So next thing is we're going to talk about the S275 file here. So it has a whole bunch of stuff here in there, and we're going to have to go through it a little bit fast because it can run out of time. But I've also removed a bunch of it. Now, the big thing of this file, the biggest difficulty working with this is it's large and it's an access. So you really want Microsoft Excel, or you're going to have to deal with sort of command line tools. Otherwise, it won't load into Google Sheets. Okay. People who have access have had a very easy time. I have not. I don't own Office. Other gotchas in the reading F275 is it seems to be more of a like a directory than actually an accounting system, right? So it's like, what's your salary and where you hired this year? Well, if you worked for 6 months and you quit, you're probably still in the file, even if you have a replacement in place, because it's a list of everyone that's been in the system, right? An employee can be split across multiple buildings because, you know, I have a speech pathologist. They're not going to be going to one school for 40 hours. They do 2 or 3 schools or something, right? And then, and this is a problem because if you use the Excel version of this data on the website rather than Access version, is they incorrectly at the state level have made a mistake, combined those buckets together. So you can't see the employees split between schools. So you got to use the Access version. And then their data modeling is a little bit messy. So the insurance and benefits are not scaled for the assignment. So if I'm assigned 0.5 time to Ballard High School, and I put 0.5 to Adams, I will have on my entry for Ballard, you know, 10K for insurance on both of them on there, as well as in Adams, make it look like it's 20K of insurance, which is not true, right? So, so largely S275 can give you ideas. You can do things like track whether a person's been moving between spots. Sort of, you know, you're doing by first name, last name, and hiring date probably is what I use as my key, but there's not really a unique employee ID for you to use. So you're kind of making up one. You can do that, but you can't exactly get the exact numbers right. They're going to always be a little off, you know. Okay. So let's go look at custodians in the wash pit and directors and supervisors, special admin, and we're going to go, unfortunately, a little fast here. To the person who said you have to be careful about central office because it's apples to oranges, absolutely. So, yeah, terminology is very, very careful. You got to be careful here. People mean different things. Okay, let's look here. So this is a subset of the FS275 file. I replaced first names, last names, fake ones, and created this thing called unique ID, so I know what I screwed up around with. So this is basically the computer name. And you can see it has its activity code, program code, and building numbers, just like before. some joker decided to say assigned salary. The prefix was ass, so ass sal is the assigned salary of the assignment, as opposed to the T final sal, total final salary for the person, and so forth. So you can see I just did the same VLOOKUP all across here, and then they have two new things: duty root and duty suffix, which is the type of which lets you can look up what type of role it is, what they were trying to do, and then whether they're classified or not. Okay, same thing, pivot table time. Actually insert a pivot table. Pivot table, pivot table. What do you do with a computer science degree? Pivot tables. Okay. Budget category here. Duty root here. Activity, I think. I wanted here. And I want activity above duty root. So they're in the right order here. And then I was trying to look up filter by filter by, actually, let's just do the thing we were talking about, directors and so forth, central office. So budget, filter by budget category. We'll just do central administration. This is the budget book definition of central administration. And then add actually we'll say here, and then over here we will do, in the values we will do the assigned salary and then also dope. I would use a name normally, but since I have this obfuscated thing, count unique of this name, so we know how many of the people are in here. And then we will put things in descending order of amount of money, as usual. This is only salary, this isn't insurance and so forth. And so we can see supervision and instruction here has 46 people in central administration doing other district administrator. I don't know exactly what. You can look at the names to figure it out if you look at the real data. Using $7 million, 51 for professional staff and so forth. Human resources has 27 for $2 million, 2.3 million of over 14 directors in human resources, and so forth. Okay, and then if you were to then go back over here and look at the line numbers, because you can actually do that if you like. I think if you double click on a table even for the value, yeah, it will actually even create you a sheet that's just the thing that you pulled out. Then you can do the question mark people are asking is, can you look at the names and then go through a few years of this 275 and see, are they moving around? Okay. So that's how I would do that analysis. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be sitting down with a pad of paper on the right and doing a lot of manual correlations. And then once you figure out a pattern, you can try to actually come down. Oh, yes, Austina, the square. That's because I only went with the central office. The question mark is, why are there 12 elementary school principals at all in the central office? That's usually actually in each school. It might be a substitute, might be something else. We don't know. I'm rushing here, but the actual first example I want to do is I want to actually recalculate Stanislaw's salary spend, and you actually find it matches. So you get about 2.5 million here. And if we come back to here and we go to Stanislaw here and we filter school to just Stanislaw, and then we add the object code to just, no, not object code, object itself, description to just the salaries. 2.53 here, and then in our other version, 2.51, about there. Okay. And, you know, again, you're going to see divergences here because substitutes, workers' comp, partial hires, quits, promotions, just stuff. So we found that we could stay within, if we were within about, we decided if we were within about 10% between these two, we considered it good enough. And if not, we would try to explain the error. I will tell you that yesterday I just found this morning when I was walking through this, I found a really interesting one, which is if I do that exact same thing, but I choose this for central district office. And I go to, I think, central administration HR. We're around 9 million here. Is that right? 8 or 9 million, something like that. But if I go over here and do this, I only get to 5. And so there's like funny divergences like this that should be explained. Again, assume a mistake first, but like it's a little bit weird. Yeah, see. Human resources total here for salary is about 50 people at 5.7 million, but we spent 9? I don't know on salary. So the spend's actually higher because you have to about double that for benefits, but you know. So these are things I think, like, before we start closing schools, maybe we should understand where that 4 million disappeared to, and so forth. Right. So we're about hitting time here. I mean, I can keep going a little longer, but I would like to end roughly in high school and go back. But that's sort of in a nutshell all of it. At the very end of this, I threw, because I was slightly lied, you do need to actually cut the CSVs down so that Google Sheets can load unless you have full Excel. And here are some shell scripts for doing it. Or you can get someone with Excel to do it for you. But that's about it. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's it for the last couple seconds. Questions, thoughts? No?
Thank you, Albert. That is a ton of work and super interesting. Not sure how to use it yet.
All right, glad to do it. If you guys have questions, definitely email me, and I will put all this up online. Well, it is already up online. But I will put some more links too if I can. With large reports, some of what you did before schools can be. For that anonymous person, I think you can make the exact same things I did. You just need to do what I was doing here. Look at it per school, look at the data file, decide what's actually humans, what's not, and then make guesses. It's
I think what I was getting to, Albert, is that I'm trying to bridge the divide between some of us that are not as tech savvy the level you are, but are asking questions that we want data to answer. And then you guys that are working with the data and then kind of coming up with some questions that may be informed by either how the system has worked historically or how education systems generally work, whatever it may be. It feels like there's that divide and everybody can learn from one another. So I'm trying to figure out how we can do that. And then also thinking ahead to taking this message beyond the advocate community directly, because then we're going to need to boil it down even further to communities in general, and then their interactions perhaps with state legislators or the board or whatever it may be. How are we able to get this, to bridge this information and make it usable for everybody? And this was a great walkthrough, and I think the target was like a little bit wider than your data nerd circle. And I'm volunteering to help spread it, like how do we get to the next circle and the circle and the circle and the circle after that?
It's a great question. It's not something that I know how. I'm temperamentally too into the weeds to be able to do that kind of thing. But I think you're absolutely right that what we really need is take people who are able to bridge those divides, like two halves, get them together, figure out the analysis that you want, and then start putting it together. But I don't know who to organize that or how to organize that. I'll happily answer questions or help ramp up here, but I don't know. I don't know. That's actually why I kind of gave the talk. So yeah, we're at end of time here. If people want to chat more or stuff, email me. I don't know. I can throw together a mailing list. You can just send an email to the SPS band numbers email address. I will tell you that I am a bit tapped out at this point, so this is sort of me attempting to hand off. But I will answer questions as much as possible. I'd probably be much less proactive. So, okay. Cool. Thank you all for coming.